Um, Within your book, you express skepticism about the ability for individuals to clearly extract Jesus from his interpreters. I guess it'd be helpful to understand if memory and legend are so intertwined, how should we try to approach the Gospels as historical sources?
So, uh, the context for my own way of thinking about this um, is what I was taught. So, I was taught the dominant paradigm, which grew out of German form criticism, which is we have these Gospels, but we believe that they all that they all put things together. So Mark's gospel is sort of like pearls on a string. Mark has taken all these traditions and then made them into a unity, into a single story. So what the form critics did is they said, okay, let's cut the string. And now we'll look at the pearls, all the little pieces that were there before Mark, and then we try to evaluate them, figure out how they might have been handed on and how they were used. And then, once we have some idea of that, we can make a judgment as to whether they come from Jesus or not. And it tended to be a fairly black and white method, or a yes or no method. It was, he said this, he didn't say that, or this happened and that didn't happen. Now, not only was I trained this way, but um, for, I don't know, a couple of decades, I operated with this paradigm. So cut the Gospels, find out their pieces, evaluate them as isolated units. What happened to me at some point is that I realized that the arguments for the authenticity of this piece or the inauthenticity of that piece, they just weren't very good. And there were always arguments on both sides. And sometimes people were using the same criteria to come to opposite conclusions. So I wondered, is there some other way to think about this? So maybe I'm wrong, but what I've been doing in the last 15, 20 years is I've been saying, let's not cut the Gospels into pieces and the pearls just fall out on the table. We pick them up one by one, then we sort them into piles. These pearls come from Jesus and those pearls don't. I think the best thing to do is to start with the early traditions we have. And for me, that means the first century, all right? Traditions in Paul, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and whatever else we might have. And what we do then, or what I do then, is I say, are there recurring patterns? Are there themes? Are there ideas that keep showing up everywhere, right? And my argument is that if there is something that keeps repeating itself, we can isolate those group of texts or family of texts, and then ask the question, what best explains the existence of this family? That is, does Jesus being a certain sort of person or teacher explain this? So it's really a development of what Albert Schweitzer did with early Christian eschatology. So he famously said, well, there's so much eschatology, so many things here about judgment and Gehenna and the coming of the Messiah and the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven and judgment and so on, that if Jesus wasn't heavily invested in eschatology, if he didn't talk a lot about this, then the sources are really, really bad. And they're just amnesiacs. And our choice is between Jesus had a lot to say about eschatology, or we just don't know who he was about because the sources have so hidden him. So I think this works for other things too. I think it works, and most people agree, that there are so many parables in the different sources that you have a choice. Either Jesus composed parables, or the sources are so lousy that we just don't know anything about him. Okay? So those are relatively simple things, but what I'm doing is I am doing this with smaller items. So for example, I will go through the tradition and I will say, look at all these sayings and events that echo traditions about Moses or echo traditions about the Exodus. And what's the best explanation for this family of texts? So I just published a new book with a chapter on Jesus and Moses. And what I do is I isolate the pattern. I say, look, this is really all over the place. People writing on Mark see this. People writing on Q see this. People writing on John see this. So the question is, where does it all come from? And once you have this family of texts, then you can construct arguments for thinking that this has something to do with Jesus, or it doesn't have anything to do with Jesus. The logic I'm doing here is not radically different than what people have done with isolated units. I just feel a lot safer working with a larger body of data. I think of it kind of like scientific experiments. So if you have one experiment and somebody concludes A, that's not enough. You need multiple experiments, and you need meta studies for some things, right? You need to look at all the things. I'm not happy with arguments about this saying or this event. For the most part, they don't work for me. So that's my alternative there. I'm looking for patterns and then trying to tell the best story that explains that pattern.
If you enjoyed this clip, head on over to Locals to watch the full conversation right now. Supporters can access the video version, and everyone can freely listen to the audio-only version of the conversation. If you're on YouTube or Rumble, please like, subscribe, and then hit the bell notification icon so you never miss a new episode. I'll catch you next time. Cheers.